Press Red has formed because I hate any form of abuse or oppression towards women. I just thought we've got to do something. So there's a group of us and we're standing up to try and inform people, make people.
I am so passionate about girls and women around the world that are suffering some sort of discrimination or abuse.
But it's all very quiet and kept secret, you know. So I'd just love this to be on people's minds, to be able to talk about it, for it not to be so secret, everything's so silent. Well, let's break that. I just want people to talk about it.
Pressing red is something that the prophets were doing over and over again. Pressing red, sounding the alarm. People of God, we have got prophetic responsibility in the world that we live in the era that we live in. My role at the Press Red Conference has been trying to take the lid off the whole issue of violence against women. And it was, for me, it followed from writing this book called Scars Across Humanity, where I take the fiction of a global woman's life cycle and say, where does violence occur? And the answer is it occurs in every part of a woman's life, even before birth. So starting with selective abortion, female genital mutilation, child brides, honour killings, domestic violence, prostitution, trafficking and so on. I found not long after that there were so many other aspects of violence against women that I came across, and I just started to write them down. I kept adding more and more chapters because I found that violence against women is institutionalised in every society in the world in some form or another, often in many forms. It's institutionalised, it becomes part of the structures of what we're seeing. Key issue in fighting gender abuse is that it really is a scar across humanity. It's an abnegation of responsibility to be human before each other, to love each other. It's the denial of who we are. And we just can't sit down and allow this atrocity to continue as though it's normal.
Jen and I went to the Slavery Museum in Liverpool. They had all these models of all the buildings, all the beautiful buildings in Liverpool. One was a missionary society where people were trained to go and spread the gospel around the world. And one of the things that they said was this building was funded by the slave trade. How is it that you can have such a great heart for something so wonderful and yet be blind to the fact that there's this huge injustice that is funding it? I wonder what in 200 years from today, Christians will look back at us and say, how did they miss that? Gender violence and abuse is perhaps one of those issues.
Gender-based violence is universal. It's not only in Africa, it is the world over. It's in the UK, it's here in Manchester, and it's here in this room. There are women in this room that have suffered violence.
In the UK, 1 in 4 women will be abused. 1 in 3 women globally will be abused in her lifetime, and in some countries UN Women estimate that's up to 70%. Abuse covers all ethnicities or religions, all rich people, poor people. And you think about how many women in your church there are and how many women that could be. We're dealing with a significant number of women that are staying silent because of shame and stigma around abuse. The church needs to be a safe space for survivors of abuse.
I have a lovely friend and she was married to a pastor. She was just horribly abused by him. He used to do horrible things to her legs, obviously hidden by skirts and trousers. He used to drag her through the house by her hair and scream at her and then kick her. And after a few years, she plucked up the courage to go to tell some of the elders in the church, because he was the pastor, and they didn't believe her and said, it's all your own fault, you're making it up.
Where you see behaviour that's not right, do something about it. Don't just stand passively by. Don't be apathetic.
Gender violence is something that touches us all. The reason it's important to engage men in this predominantly is the women are the people who have been affected. They're the gender that's been affected by this. But if they're the only ones who are conversing, then we're never going to see a change. I think it's when we see ourselves as human beings together and men start to engage in a conversation, we start to see some joined up thinking, and actually men stand in the gap and start to use their testosterone for good and not ill, then we might start to see a difference.
We see that pornography impacts literally millions and millions of people, and women who are in relationships with porn users are being abused because of that. Women who are performers in the porn industry are being abused because of that.
Just don't do nothing. If you're touched by this, you have to do something.
There's several charities that we are highlighting at Press Red, and I'd love people also to support those charities. I'd love to see women empowered around the world to have a voice and people to start listening. And it's not just a women's thing, this. I want to see men really adopt this and start standing up and speaking out.
Gender-based violence is a solvable issue. This is a solvable issue. It doesn't need to be here, and we as a church can start to bring that change. I firmly believe that, and we can bring it at a sustained level. We can transform attitudes that lead to violence against women.
And I heard about 27 million people caught in slavery, 1.2 million children a year sold, 2 children every minute. And I thought, wow, if that was my daughter, I'd do something. And it was the next thought that changed the course of my life. They are someone's daughter, I should do something.
Just do something, you know, find your something and do it.
People say what we're trying to do when we gather like this, they say that if we want to end gender violence, if we want to end modern day slavery, they say it's impossible. People say that all the time, that you can't make a difference. I love the quote of Muhammad Ali that says this: impossible is just a big word thrown around by small-minded men who find it easier to live in a world that they've been given, rather to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is temporary, impossible is nothing, impossible is a dare. And I want to thank you today, Press Red, that you are taking up this dare to believe that we can live in a world free from exploitation, free from slavery, free from gender violence, because we are the church, we are the people of God, and this is what we do.